We are starting Unit 8 with percent, so 8.1 is I can solve percent problems. A few warm-up questions. What does the word percent mean? Well, let's look at the word percent. Percent. It means per 100. So, one part or a part for every 100. You probably heard percents all over, 80% of this, 95% of that, especially on your test scores. So the next thing, change each percent to a decimal. Thinking back to Unit 4 with common rational numbers, to change a percent to a decimal, we think of the decimal right there, and we have to move it back 2 spots. So 38% is actually 0.38 as a decimal. 25.6%, we move the decimal over to the left twice, so that is actually 0.0256. 0.7%, 1, 2, so this would be 0.07. And then 1.59, move it over twice, so that would be 0.0159. So that's changing percents to decimals. We move the decimal place twice to the left. Now change each decimal to a percent. Now we're going backwards. We want to take the decimal place and move it twice to the right, or multiplying by 100. So 0.12 would be 12%. 0.539, move the decimal over twice, would be 53.9%. 0.05, move it over twice, would just be 5%. And then move this place over twice, we would get 2.99%. So having that knowledge will be very useful today, changing percents to decimals and decimals to percents. There are 3 main types of percent problems. All of them can be solved using an equation. The equation can be set up the same way every time. Once the equation is set up, we can use our equation solving skills to find the missing piece. Here's the format of nearly all percent problems. So, we have 3 different blanks. One of these blanks represents a percent. Maybe you can already guess where that is. And 2 of these blanks represent numbers. So this box right here in your notes is pretty important, and you're going to use this a lot throughout the unit. Blank is blank percent symbol of blank. So there's going to be a number. Number is percent, so you're going to have your percent right here, of another number. So it's a question, what is the percent of another number? Remember, percents will have a percent symbol, it looks like that, behind them, and should always be written in decimal form, or as a decimal, when using them in an equation, or when entering them into a calculator. So, whenever you see a percent and you're using it in an equation, we're going to change it to a decimal number. And we practiced that in our warm-up up above. Another thing to remember, the word is usually means equals. And the word of usually means multiply. In most cases, yes, and that's why we're saying usually. In not all cases, though, so we need to be careful and understand what the problem means. So some examples. 2 times 4 is 8. I see the word is, so I'm thinking equals. So 2 times 4 equals 8. I know that's true with using a multiplication fact. Another example, 3/4 of 12 is 9. So 3/4 of means multiplication, is means equals most of the time. So we would set it up as 3/4 times 12 equals 9. And if you wanted to check your work, you could cross cancel. 4 goes into 4 once, 4 goes into 12. 3 times 3 is 9. Let's look at a couple examples using that highlighted box I have up here. Number is percent of another number. So we're going to solve these problems round to the nearest hundredth if necessary. So we're going to use that. Blank is blank percent of blank. What is 14% of 82? So we don't know what this what number is. We don't know what that number is on the other side of is. Then we have 14% of 82. Now let's make an equation out of this. X equals, is means equals, 14%. Well, if we're going to write an equation, we need to change this 14 to a decimal. So remember, to do a percent to a decimal, we move the decimal over to the left twice. So 14% is actually 0.14. Of means multiplication, so we're going to do 0.14 times 82. So if we type that into our calculator, 0.14 times 82, we get 11.48 as our answer. So 11.48 is 14% of 82. Let's look at the next one. 18 is, so I'm going to write 18 is 66% of what number? So we're going to multiply 66% times a number we don't know yet. Remember, when you see a percent, change it to a decimal. So 66% is 0.66, and then times a variable, so 0.66x. We want to get x by itself, so using inverse operations, we're going to divide both sides by 0.66. That cancels out. So in my calculator, we're going to do 18 divided by 0.66. And we get 27.27 repeating. We're going to round to the nearest hundredth. 7 is in the hundredths place. 2 tells me to keep it the same, so our answer is 27.27. All right, on to the next one. This one has a star, so let's see what we're working with here. 22 is what percent of 48? So we need to figure out the percent. So let's still write our equation. 22 equals, and I'm going to use P for percent of 48. So we're going to do P times 48. Now, we want to get P by itself. So this is the same thing as saying 48P. So we're going to divide both sides by 48. And let's see what we get. 22 divided by 48. 0.4583 repeating. So I'm just going to write out that whole, not the whole thing, but a few of the numbers. So 0.45833. That's probably enough. But we want it to be a percent. It asked us what percent. So how do we change a decimal to a percent? Well, we talked about this earlier. To change from a decimal to a percent, you multiply by 100. So the percent is actually 45.83%. So a big thing to remember is if it asks you what percent, you want to change your decimal back to a percent for your final answer. Okay. Now, I want you to take a quick look at the problems in example 2 below. So these problems right here. Do you notice anything different? Hint, note the order. Well, while I'm looking at it, 20% of 82 is what number? The order is just different. The question order is different, but it doesn't change anything. So, the great thing about using the equation technique is it doesn't really matter how the question is arranged. We still use the same words and ideas to translate it into an equation. The numbers and operations might be in a different order, but the techniques are just the same. As long as we're careful, we'll still get the right answer. So we have 3 problems to solve in a slightly different order, but it's the same technique. So 20% of 82 is what number? So we're going to do 20% times 82. Remember, when you see a percent, change it to a decimal. So that would be 0.2 times 82 is what number? We don't know, so I'm going to use x. So in your calculator, 0.2 times 82, and we get 16.4. So 16.4 is that missing number. Let's look at the next one. 2.5% of what number is 10? So 2.5%, need to change that to a decimal number. So that would be 0.025. Of what number? So we don't know what we're multiplying by, so I'm going to use x, is 10. Now to get x by itself, use inverse operations. We're going to divide both sides by 0.025. To get x by itself, so 10 divided by 0.025, and we get 400. So that was a nice answer for us. No decimals. And then on to the next one. You may have guessed we're going to have a what percent. So we need to be careful with those. What percent of 8 is 3? So we're doing p times 8. And you can put that in parentheses if that's confusing. And then is 3. I'm going to erase that. So to get p by itself, we're going to divide both sides by 8. So p is by itself. And then we're going to do 3 divided by 8. And we get 0.375. Now remember, it says what percent, so we need to change our answer to a percent from a decimal. To do that, we multiply by 100 or move it over twice. So our percent is 37.5. And remember the percent symbol afterwards. Okay, there was your first introduction to solving percent problems. Good luck. Make sure to do the self-assessment and see how you do.